slow start after crossing Germany. Following more or less the course of the Rhine River, we enter Holland, and here we head decisively towards the coasts of Friesland, which overlook the North Sea. From here we will descend south to reach the most famous and most visited tourist destinations in the Netherlands. Holland is a country that lends itself a lot to plein-air tourism, and therefore we particularly recommend it to all lovers of this type of tourism. First destination is the island of Ameland, opposite Hull, where we left the camper. We embark on a scooter, which is essential to visit the island, which is over 25 kilometers long. One thing that immediately strikes you is the non-straight path that the ship travels, which takes the journey time to about an hour to cross a rather narrow strip of sea. Well, if it were not so, the motor ship would touch the bottom. Try to observe the area from above with Google Earth and you will immediately realize it. The natural beauty and quiet of Ameland, also known as the Diamond of the West Frisian Islands, attract more and more tourists to this island. The resident population, about 3,500 people, almost tenfold in the summer months. Thanks to the influx of tourists, Ameland is a nature reserve that is home to truly splendid flora and fauna. The island also has a rich tradition of whaling and merchant shipping. A large part of the island is located below the water level, and some villages are now abandoned because they are flooded by the sea. The highest point, where the lighthouse stands, is about 20 meters high. In practice, the island is a large sand dune that combines the beauty of unspoiled nature with the advantage of not being completely, or almost uninhabited. In short, a good compromise for a weekend that is different from normal. Sluisdijk is a large dam, built between 1927 and 1932, 32 kilometers long, 90 meters wide and reaching a height of 7 meters above sea level, and crossed by a highway. Around the 16th kilometer, in the middle of the dam, there is a refreshment point with parking, bars, rest areas and a structure with an elevated road that allows pedestrians to cross the highway and admire the view. The AF Sluisdijk is the most important of the hydraulic works that separated the Zuiderzee inlet from the North Sea, transforming it into a freshwater lake, and preventing tide or ocean storms from flooding an immense area, allowing to definitively wrest from the waters the territories that today make up the province of Flevoland. Among the various maintenance and modernization projects, the construction of a railway line is underway, the extension of the motorway with the doubling of the lanes, and the raising of the embankment, in anticipation of the increase in the average sea level. What to say? Even today the Dutch are taking serious and concrete measures against a danger still denied or ignored by many. Volendam is a village and fishing port located inside the Ameland. The lake formed by the Great AF Sluisdijk Dam. In the early 1900s it became a favorite destination for painters. It was thanks to the advent of artists that Volendam experienced a new reputation, starting to develop as a tourist destination. The main street of the port area is characterized by numerous buildings with wooden facades and pediments. Behind the main street of the harbour area is the area called Doolhof, literally, labyrinth, characterized by narrow canals and streets behind the locks below the water level. Volendam, famous for its fish, mainly eels, and for its traditional costumes, has also become a holiday destination for the inhabitants of Amsterdam, which is only about 15 kilometers away. At one time, the main livelihood of the Volendam population was fishing. Now the main economic resource of the town is represented by tourism, but to be honest, in recent years it has become too exploited and everything is now oriented towards hit-and-run tourism. Marken, until a few decades ago, was an island in the Zuider Sea. Today it is joined to the mainland thanks to the drying up of the surrounding polders, which has changed the morphology of the territory, making this ancient fishing village a peninsula. Presents perfectly preserved wooden houses. Today it is an open-air museum, protected from tourist overcrowding thanks to the prohibition of circulation for any vehicle. The most characteristic area is that of the port, with its wooden houses erected on stilts to avoid the tides present before the construction of the AF Sluisdijk. The ancient herring smokehouses are still visible, today transformed into commercial activities for tourists. The whole area is teeming with ancient fishing villages, now transformed into tourist attractions, which differ little from each other. Edam. Edam owes its popularity to whale fishing, which once had numerous factories here for the processing of fat, and to the cheese of the same name. Edam cheese has been produced since the 16th century. It is characterized by the wax coating, yellow for the Netherlands and red for abroad, used to distinguish it from Gouda. During the months of July and August, the cheese market is held in the main square every Wednesday morning. Until the 20s of the 20th century, an average of 250,000 cheeses were sold a year in this market. Amsterdam Square is the main square of Amsterdam, a meeting place for tourists and citizens. In the city centre, a few steps from the central station and the main monuments. In this square is the Royal Palace, which however is not the residence of the royal house and is used by the latter only occasionally. It can be visited, and inside there are numerous works of art. The main hall, the Burgerzaal, entirely covered in white marble, symbolizes a miniature of the universe. The floors are marble with inlays of maps of the Eastern and Western Hemisphere, and a map of the stars of the northern sky. The courtroom is also impressive, where there are 4 large marble caryatids. Next to the Royal Palace is the Neerwekerk, reserved for coronations and weddings of royalty and funeral ceremonies, and burial place of the royal family itself. On the opposite side of the square stands the National Monument, a 22 meters high obelisk, erected in 1956 in memory of the fallen of the Second World War. In front of the central station stands the Church of St. Nicola. Externally it vaguely resembles Russian churches. The interior decor is unusually rich. The Baroque high altar, from 1889, and the pulpit, from 1892, with marble sculptures stand out. Inside the red light district, there is the Oude Kerk, the Old Church, the oldest church in Amsterdam dating back to the 13th century. Its stained glass windows are very beautiful, partly original. Do not miss the church dedicated to San Francesco, built by the Jesuits. The stained glass windows, the altar and the canopy make a fine show here. The Magerebrug is the most famous of the bridges in the city of Amsterdam. It is a wooden drawbridge over the Amstel River. The bridge has served as the subject in the filming of many films. It is made of white painted wood, and is decorated with 1,200 light bulbs, which illuminate it during the evening. The square is named after the famous painter Rembrandt, of whom a statue was erected on site in 1852. The square is characterized by the presence of numerous outdoor cafes and some discos, which attract tourists and residents, especially in the evening. Bloemenmarkt is Amsterdam's floating flower market. Here you can find all sorts of flowers or bulbs, even very precious rarities. It is located right on one of the largest canals in Amsterdam, the Single. The peculiarity of this market is that it is the only floating flower market in Europe. It is in fact found on barges used as houseboats. Among the museums not to be missed are the Rijksmuseum and the Van Gogh Museum, which has the largest collection of works by the Dutch painter Vincent van Gogh. We opted for the latter. The collection includes works that document the various stages of Van Gogh's life, from childhood to various emotional stages, up to his death. Among the works owned there are Potato Eaters, Vincent's Room in Ireland, one of the various creations of Girasoli. Other attractions that the city offers are the Wax Museum, a boat trip on the canals, the House of Anne Frank, the Vondel Park, the House of Rembrandt and the famous Red Light District. The city of Gouda owes its worldwide fame to the cheese of the same name. But this ancient historic city is definitely worth a visit. Gouda offers a historical reenactment of the cheese market, which is held every Thursday morning, only in summer. The shapes are still carried by horse-drawn carts and arranged in a row on the ground. After that, the negotiations between farmers and traders begin, strictly dressed in clothes of the ancient Dutch tradition, while the ladies, who wear the characteristic Compline wooden clogs, show themselves to a public extremely intrigued by this historical representation. Agreements on the sale of cheese are signed with a theatrical play of hands, followed by the final squeeze. Dedicated to John the Baptist, this impressive church stands in the center of Gouda and is renowned throughout the country for its design and beautiful stained glass windows. Built in the 15th century, the church has seen several changes and restorations over the years, but its stained glass windows have remained intact. Known as the longest church in the Netherlands, the interior features an abundance of stone columns and supporting arches. The large windows are lined up along the nave and represent different scenes, among which the baptism of Jesus and the Last Supper stand out. Stadhuis, the old town hall building, is located in the center of the marked square and is a landmark of the city. Built in 1448, the town hall is one of the oldest in the Netherlands, and features a delightful Gothic style. The front facade of the building features a series of pointed towers and arched windows, embellished and refined by stone statues of various important figures in Dutch history. On both sides of the town hall there are a series of bells that ring at every hour. In addition, at night, the front of the Stadhuis is illuminated in various colors and sometimes musical performances are put on. The city of Delft is known worldwide for its majolica, which had a great moment of splendor in the 17th and 18th centuries. The majolicas are characterized by the colors blue and white. La Oude Kerk is the oldest church in the city and stands on the central Oude Delft Canal, also the oldest in the city. Characteristic is its 75-meter-high leaning bell tower, built on Flemish models. The new church, in Dutch Nieuwe Kerk, is the largest building of worship of the Protestant confession. It stands on the central market square, in front of the City Hall, which is the most important tourist building in the city. It is a building that incorporates the tower on three sides. The main facade is made of sandstone, with large Crusader windows. The upper windows are decorated with large shells and a balustrade runs above it. The Hague. is the seat of the Dutch parliament and government, but by population it is only the third largest city in the country. We started the tour of the city starting from the immense beach of Scheveningen. The bars, restaurants and beach clubs, one more beautiful and alternative than the other, follow one another uninterruptedly along the promenade, offering visitors lounges on the sand, romantic braziers, armchair music and typical food from every corner of the world. The heart of Den Haag's 11 kilometers of coastline is the imposing Kurhaus building, born in the early 19th century as a balneotherapy establishment, later a luxury hotel with richly decorated lounges. Right in front of the Kurhaus is another icon of the city, the pier, the famous recently restored pier that offers all kinds of shops and restaurants. There is also a large Ferris wheel, 50 meters high, to give an extra touch to the atmosphere suspended between past and present. For the more adventurous, there is the descent hanging from a steel cable stretched between the head of the pier and the mainland. The modern city offers little to the tourist. The Binnenhof is an architectural complex that has hosted the meetings of the States General, the Dutch Parliament, since 1446 and the center of the country's political life for many centuries. The Noordeinde Palace, badly damaged by a fire in 1948, subsequently restored, has been the Queen's workplace since 1984. About 20 kilometers before Rotterdam, in a wonderful water-rich environment, the windmills of Kinderdijk stand. 19 magnificent mills, built around 1740, are part of a larger water management system aimed at preventing flooding. Today they symbolize the water control activity of the Netherlands, and in 1997, they gained recognition as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The mills of Kinderdijk have never grinded grain. They were built with the sole purpose of pumping water from the lower canals towards the higher sea, in order to keep the lowlands of this region dry. Standing facing each other, they represent a Dutch icon. You can also admire the many waterways, embankments, mills and locks and discover how the Dutch have been using water to their advantage for over 1,000 years. Today the pumping function is performed by electric pumps and the blades of the mills turn only for tourist purposes. Of the 19 mills, 2 can be visited and allow you to understand how a mill was built inside and how it worked, as well as trying to understand how a family lived there at the time. The mill, usually consisting of 4 floors, had the kitchen, the living room and the parents' room on the ground floor, the children's rooms on the first floor. On the second floor there was an attic storage room where the caught fish were smoked, while on the top floor were the huge gears of the mill, and again above the canopy, which could rotate 360 degrees according to the direction of the wind. Rotterdam is a city of many faces, a dynamic port city, a modern city of fun, an elegant city of shopping and a vibrant city of artists. Rotterdam is above all the Dutch city of architectural development, where innovation plays a leading role and the skyline is constantly changing. The cubic houses, in Dutch gebouwwoningen, constitute one of the most surprising attractions of the city. This residential complex, designed by a Dutch architect, is characterized by its houses, real cubes, but not vertically overlapping as one would expect, but inclined at 45 degrees. Curious tourists can visit the Kubus House Museum. It is also possible, if desired, to stay overnight in a cube, personally experiencing its strengths and weaknesses. Although more than 30 years have already passed, the cube houses still represent one of the most interesting projects in the city. Many other cities in the world are already familiar with the phenomenon of the futuristic restructuring of old indoor markets. And Rotterdam also has a very charming one. With a covered area the size of a football field, the market is full of stalls and restaurants selling fresh fish, meat, vegetables and delicatessen. The ideal place, in other words, for lovers of gastronomy eager to spend a day between aromas and flavors. The roof structure houses offices and residential apartments, undoubtedly very characteristic. The Euromast Tower was designed in 1960, on the occasion of the floral event that year. It was supposed to be the tallest building in Rotterdam, but only a few years later was it surpassed by another building. The larger San Lorenzo Church is a Calvinist place of worship and is the only remaining building in the medieval city. Middelburg has all the charms of a proud city steeped in history, and offers many interesting attractions, such as the old canal houses. In the past, Middelburg was one of the main commercial centers of the Dutch East India Company, with 1,200 listed buildings, many of which have been expertly restored. Middelburg is a city where you can feel the rich history of the former shopping center at every step. Here in the past there were no house numbers, so the houses were given a name. The late Gothic Town Hall, built in 1452 and located in the city centre, is one of the main tourist attractions of the city. With the lavishly decorated facade, it is the perfect backdrop for the lively market scene taking place in the central square. The terraces of the numerous bars and restaurants overlooking the square invite you to stop for a coffee in the sun or have a snack. The Middelburg Abbey is a large complex which includes 3 churches, the Koelkerk, the oldest, the Nieuwe Kerk and the Wandelkerk. The Koelkerk bell tower, nicknamed John the Long, is 90 meters high and is the symbol of the city of Middelburg. It was destroyed in 1940 during the battle against the Germans but was raised again in exemplified forms. than 50 kilometers separate us from Belgium. We leave the Netherlands with regret because its landscapes are truly fascinating, and the cities, even the largest, livable and on a human scale. And head to Antwerp, where the next video will begin.